1951. We thought we were ready. No one could have believed the shock that awaited us.
Hi everyone, my name's Greg with Low Tech Gamer, and today we're going to review Resistance Burning Skies for the PlayStation Vita. The Resistance series started way back in 2006 as a launch title for the PlayStation 3, and the series has continued and evolved over the years. There have been 3 games released for the home consoles, and then there's been 1 game released for the PlayStation Portable, and that was Resistance Retribution. With that being said, there's been a long legacy of great AAA titles for the series, and this game didn't quite meet my expectations, but nonetheless, it's still a fun game to play. Resistance for the Vita is a prequel to the other games that's been released in the series, and the story and background is quite simple. Chimeras have taken over the world, and this game starts off on the day when the Chimera invade the United States. And you're a firefighter, and so you're being called to an apartment building or a warehouse that's on fire, and the story just picks up from there. As you play through the game, there are a total of 8 weapons that you can unlock. For each weapon, you can unlock an additional 8 upgrades for that weapon. However, you only can have 2 of one type of upgrades per weapon allowed. And the way that you unlock these upgrades for your weapons is that there are these gray cube orbs scattered throughout all your levels, and you pick that up and then you use that to upgrade your weapons. So, for being on a handheld, I thought there was a fair amount of diversity in the weapons that you choose. You're not going to be able to play through and use one weapon throughout the entire game. However, the game is designed and set up so you use all the weapons for certain type of situations if you want to progress through the game more easily. The controls on Resistance are done quite well. You can use the down button on the D-pad to act as your sprint, and it's just right above the left analog stick. So it's very comfortable to use that setup. However, there are some back controls where if you double tap on the back, that'll make you sprint as well. Your melee combat and throwing your grenades or different types of grenades, that's all done on screen with the tap. So the controls are really well mapped out, thought out, and if you're in a tight situation, it's quite easy to do your melee combat. However, I did have one complaint with the controls, and that's being that your grenades and your melee buttons are on the left-hand side of the touchscreen, and they're kind of close together, and I have big hands. So I found myself, when I go for melee combat, I'd throw a grenade on accident, for example. And I wish those buttons could have been spread out a little bit further apart. That way, you didn't accidentally hit the wrong button. The audio in the game is pretty good. The voice acting is good. It's acceptable. The soundtrack is orchestrated just like the other games. Nothing stands out as being memorable, but nonetheless, it's easy on the ears. It doesn't bore you in any way. It doesn't get on your nerves. So there's really no complaints with the audio. The graphics in the game are average to good at best. The animation is smooth, but a lot of the things in the game appear as being like a flat texture. Nothing stands out as being bump mapped. It looks like a really good iPhone or iPad game, and the areas that you go into are some of the street missions or where you're in the city. They just feel barren and sparse. It's like you had the buildings, but there's nothing in it. There's not a lot of people on screen. So overall, I'm going to have to say that the graphics aren't spectacular. It's definitely not pushing the capabilities of the hardware, but it's not horrible to look at. So it's a mixed bag as far as what you get with the game, but overall, they're fair to good. The last aspect that I want to cover about the single-player part of the game is that the story is decent. It's not great. It's average at best. And there are certain parts in the game where the story plays out where I didn't feel any compelling emotion to the events that took place. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but I wasn't moved in any way emotionally to be attached to the characters within the game. And a lot of times I felt that the developers, instead of making the game better in their design, some of the AI pathing with the characters in the game is atrocious. And I really just felt a lot of times that they just threw waves of characters at you in order to make the game difficult. Now, taking a look at the multiplayer for this game, there are 4 different types of game types that you can play. First one's survival. That's where you go through and you kill waves of enemies that come at you. The next one is deathmatch in either 4-player or 8-player mode. Then you have team deathmatch, which is again 4 or 8-player mode. And the last one is all modes, and that still is only 8 players. So there isn't a whole lot of depth or variety when it comes to the multiplayer. And I really wasn't impressed with the multiplayer. I think overall I've seen about 4 different maps, so there's not a lot of variety. And the gameplay, because there's only so few people, really was boring. The best way I can describe this is the multiplayer that came out for Call of Duty 2 when the Xbox 360 launched. And I believe in that you had either 4 to 8 people that you played with. So the multiplayer, which I thought would be a huge aspect of this game, given that the Vita has quite a bit of power in it, and you both have Wi-Fi and 3G built in as options, and the developer didn't utilize that at all. It just felt like the multiplayer is tacked on, and it was just very uninspiring and boring. Looking at this game as a whole, I really got to say that this game is good, but it's not great. There are aspects to the multiplayer that's holding it back. The graphics aren't spectacular. Everything else was good or average at best. But going through my playthrough, I did have a lot of fun. It's worth picking it up just for that. And thus, Low Tech Gamer is going to award this game a Bronze Award. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed our review. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, leave feedback. We'd really appreciate it. Take her easy.